Hey guys, Jay here. So this may be an unpopular or even an uncommon opinion, but I personally believe that playing vinyl through turntables is actually a better way to listen to music than high-res streaming. And I'm gonna explain why I feel that way in this video. So quite honestly, in the beginning of my audiophile journey, as someone that is a young audiophile that got into listening to music and this hobby very early on, I wasn't always hot about vinyl. No, I streamed for the most of my listening because streaming is just easier. And not to mention the nasty crackles and noise floor of a turntable that I experienced in the past. But at the same time, I also didn't wake up one morning and thought, well, vinyl is better now. No, it was actually because of this turntable right here. This is the Purefidelity Harmony Turntable. And definitely, it's not like any other turntable I've had in the past, nor is it a turntable for everyone because the price tag is $8,000 just for the turntable without the arm and the cartridge. So absolutely, this is a turntable for someone that has a large collection of records that they really want to play and cares about vinyl playback. And I am one of those people. Not only do I have, well-recorded audiophile music I've collected myself, but a lot of my collection actually is passed down from my grandfather and my mother, the music they used to play. So it provides nostalgia and emotional connection that I really can't get from streaming because these music pieces, these tracks don't exist on streaming. So considering the investment and considering the actual engineering and thoughtfulness that goes into a high-end turntable like this, is definitely not for everyone or someone that's just getting into vinyl, nor someone that finds vinyl cool and just wants to dip their toes in. This is for someone that is very serious about vinyl playback. So how is this turntable any different from, let's say, Project or any of the budget turntables out there that you can buy for a few $100s. So unlike most turntables out there that has a plinth and then maybe a rubber feet underneath it or at best some spikes, the Harmony turntable actually starts off with this isolation platform that is made out of aircraft aluminum. And it comes with these 4 adjustable feet underneath it called the Isoacoustic Gaia 4 feet. And if you didn't know, Isoacoustic is a separate company from Purefidelity, and they are a leader in the isolation device sector. And I personally own and use many of their isolation devices, and you've probably seen them around if you've seen my channel for a while. But interestingly, if you look at the Isoacoustic website, you'll find the Gaia 1, the 2, and the 3, but you won't find a Gaia 4. And that's because the Gaia 4 was specifically designed in collaboration with Purefidelity and Isoacoustic to fit this turntable. But that's not all. The isolation platform has 3 precision machined holes that fit 3 additional Gaia 4 feet between the platform and the plinth for a flush, sleek look. And that's just the start. The plinth of a turntable is probably one of the most important things when it comes to the sound of a turntable. And largely, it can be separated into 2 different categories, generally speaking. Low mass and high mass. So very heavy or very light. A benefit of a high mass turntable is that it usually has great bass, but the downfall is that it can sound dull at times or dead sounding. While the low mass turntables, lighter turntables are known to have great dynamics and speed, but at the same time, the downfall of a light turntable is that at times it can sound bright and brittle. So where does this plinth fit in? Is it a high mass or low mass? And the answer is, it's neither. Purefidelity calls this the hybrid design. And the idea here is that they didn't want a high mass or a low mass turntable plinth, but rather somewhere in the middle. So a medium mass plinth, not too heavy nor too light. And for that exact purpose, they chose Ultra MDF as the material for the plinth, which is a denser and a stronger material than standard MDF. Next, we go a little bit into the micro scale. And so this is the bearing. And what's really cool here is that while most turntables just use steel as a bearing material, here they're using ruby. And the reason they use ruby is because it's an extremely hard material with a Mohs scale of 9. Only one stone is harder and more durable, and that is diamond. Even the bearing shaft is made out of bronze and not brass, like many other turntables. because bronze offers better strength, it's more durable, and it's lower in friction. Now finally, the subplatter made out of aircraft, aluminum, and steel gets oiled up and inserted into the bronze shaft. Another great thing about this turntable is that it uses 2 belts while most turntables just use 1. And then there's this. This is probably my favorite thing about this turntable, and it's this 48mm Delrin platter. And of course, this is where you place your vinyl. Now, Delrin is more expensive than materials like acrylic that is commonly used to make platters in many other turntables, but for a good reason. The first and the most obvious reason is that Delrin is a much more durable material than acrylic. It is less likely to crack and wear. But on top of that, and more importantly, Delrin is lower in friction and lower in resonance, meaning it doesn't ring. And actually, Delrin shares many of the same properties as your record, except that Delrin is more denser and a durable material. And it also comes with this record weight, which is quite hefty at 760 grams or so. And this is a custom-made stainless steel record weight for this turntable. It helps to keep the record stay flat onto the Delrin's platter surface, but not only that, the black part you see here on the bottom of this weight is actually made out of Delrin. And you'll see these small steel bearings as well, all intended to keep any micro vibrations away from plaguing your music playback. So even the record weight was made for very intentional, perfect music playback on a turntable. But this is a pretty heavy weight, and I know that a lot of turntable enthusiasts out there buy a turntable and then buy third-party weights like this. But a record weight like this that's pretty heavy may not be healthy for motors designed without the intentions of supporting that extra weight. Of course, the Harmony Turntable's custom AC motor is designed with that intention. But also, you can change the speed of this motor with 0.003% accuracy using the quartz-locked speed controller, with a simple click to choose between 33.3 RPM or 45 RPM speeds depending on the record you decide to play. So that covers this turntable, and we'll talk about the arm and the cartridge in a minute, but why the elaborate, over-the-top construction of this turntable? Well, because it's absolutely necessary. If you think about fundamentally how a turntable works in the first place, the stylus, or the small diamond, essentially follows these grooves inside your vinyl and vibrates, converting a mechanical energy into a very small electrical signal that is thousands of times less than what your CD player or streamers put out. Even the smallest dust, even the vibrations that's coming from your speakers can interfere with the stylus and have unwanted artifacts. Hence why there's so many accessories out there for audiophiles that want to clean their records, like this ultrasonic record cleaner. So all this is to say, what you may find to be over the top in terms of isolation and the construction of this turntable is absolutely necessary for the playback of vinyl for those that want to hear it at its best. Now, as you can imagine, the arm and the stylus is equally as important on a turntable. There's many different arms in the market, but the one that I have right now is from Origin Live in the UK, called the Illustrio SE ToneArm. And the reason I got it was because it came highly recommended with the Harmony turntable. And if you know a little bit more about turntables, the choosing of the arm to match synergistically with the ToneArm to make it sound perfectly good together is a whole nother topic. And for the sake of time, I'll just say the Illustrio SE ToneArm I find is a really good match to the Harmony turntable. Now, another piece that is highly recommended with this turntable is the Statos cartridge. Now, in terms of cartridge, there are so many in the market. There are cartridges that literally cost as much as this entire setup. And while the Statos cartridge is not inexpensive by any means, at $2,000 US, in the world of crazy turntable setups, it is actually considered affordable. Crazy, right? However, for me, this isn't even crazy considering that I worked at a retail store that had a $300,000 turntable called the Clear Audio Statement, with a matching cartridge called the Goldfinger, priced at $25,000 US. And while I personally haven't owned a turntable like that, nor a cartridge that cost $25,000 US, I got to play around with them, and that was really cool. And all this is to say, from my experience of being able to play around with multiple very, very expensive turntables and cartridge setups, I was really impressed with this cartridge. In the beginning, I did find that it was a little bit bright, was a little bit thin sounding, but after break-in hours, about few hundred hours, it started to really become more thicker and warmer and richer sounding while retaining that detail and nuance. I could hear every little detail in the grooves of my vinyl. And certainly, I had nothing to complain about the sound quality I was hearing out of the Statos cartridge. But I wanted to put Purefidelity's claim to the test. Purefidelity claims that the Statos cartridge is such a good match to the Harmony turntable that on the Harmony turntable specifically, it competes with cartridges that cost twice as much. So I called up some of my audiophile friends and they lent me cartridges that cost anywhere from $500 all the way up to $20,000, and we listened together. And the findings not only shocked me, but my friends as well. I thought at least the $20,000 cartridge would perform better on this turntable. After all, it's $20,000. However, this $2,000 cartridge actually sounded better on this turntable specifically. None of the cartridge actually came close. Even my friend who owned and brought the $20,000 cartridge is now looking at the Statos cartridge to replace his $20,000 cartridge. Now, at the time of this video, I have no way of confirming if the Statos cartridge is as good as it is on this turntable as it is with other turntables. I haven't tried the Statos cartridge on other turntables yet. But on this turntable, what we heard as unanimously was that it was more neutral, it was more balanced. So bass, treble, mid-range, none of them is exaggerated. So it was all very linear sounding, but at the same time, it was very detailed and nuanced. Like I said, I could hear all the little details in the music, and it was the most quiet out of all the cartridges. The only one that came close and was comparable was the $20,000 cartridge, and that one was, I would say, as quiet as the Statos cartridge on this turntable. But what made everyone go, wow, this cartridge is really a good match to the Harmony turntable was the soundstage. Out of all these cartridges that we tried, the Statos cartridge on the Harmony turntable provided the most holographic, wide, and deep soundstage that was really hemispheric. And none of the cartridges came close to the soundstage the Statos provided on this turntable. And that came across as a particular shock, and it was interesting because this cartridge doesn't even use exotic materials that you can find in many of the $10,000, $20,000 cartridges out there. It is simply a really well designed and precisely designed cartridge that uses aluminum, copper, and magnesium as its body and solid aluminum as a cantilever, and of course a micro-elliptical diamond stylus. But I was told by Purefidelity that they tried many different cartridges on this turntable and ended up with this because it just simply sounded the best with their turntable. And of course, I was skeptical of that claim, but after testing some cartridges out for myself, I am a full-on believer. And now I do plan on trying different cartridges on this turntable still to just experiment and perhaps even find a better cartridge later. But for $2,000 US, I think this is a really good match and hard to beat, considering that we tried cartridges up to $20,000 that just barely kind of competed with this cartridge on this specific turntable. Now, the Harmony turntable comes in many different finishes, from natural walnut semi-gloss to Santos rosewood semi-gloss, quilted maple high gloss, piano black high gloss, and white high gloss. And obviously the one I have here is the quilted maple high gloss. And as you have seen, the build quality is absolutely phenomenal. It is crafted with care and attention, and every intention that goes into this turntable is made for good reason. And the finish, the craftsmanship here is heirloom quality. It's literally meant to last generations and stand the test of time. And I actually saw this turntable back in Toronto Audio Fest 2 years ago, and I had my eyes on it because it was just so good looking in person that I really wanted to hear it for myself. But honestly, aside from its gorgeous looks and aesthetics of the turntable, the sound itself is what's the most gorgeous to me. The sound I hear out of this turntable is nothing short of excellent. In fact, when I first got this turntable and hooked it up to my hi-fi system, I was shocked by the improvements I heard in my hi-fi system. And by improvements, I mean the emotional connection and the engagement to the music that I was hearing that led me to play record after record after record on this turntable for hours on end. And I think the context here is pretty important. I was actually streaming most of the time before this turntable. And my streamer setup consists of the Orender N20, which is a pretty expensive streamer with whatever DAC I'm reviewing at the time, which cost a lot more than this turntable setup. And coming from my more expensive streamer setup, I noticed that I enjoy the turntable setup more for this one reason alone. You know, we all have those portion of the track where it's sibilant or bright, but it's in the recording, so you kind of withstand it. It's not your gear, it's not your speakers, it's in the recording. So you kind of withstand that portion of the track that you love because that part is recorded bright and sibilant. Well, on this turntable, playing the same track at the same volume at the same part of the track that was sibilant and bright to me through streaming, on the turntable, I don't find it bothersome whatsoever. It's not that it's subdued or softer sounding or anything like that, or it's less detailed. No, it's actually more detailed. But somehow the hi-hats, the snares, the snap that was bright to me before, on this turntable, it sounds more natural and it's just not bothersome to my ears whatsoever. And maybe this is what audiophiles mean by that digital edge with streamer and digital setups. But one thing is for sure, I enjoyed every piece of music that I played on this turntable from beginning to end. There was no portion of the track where I felt I needed to skip or wasn't pleased and was withstanding a portion of the track. From beginning to end, I enjoyed it fully every time on this turntable. And as a younger person who is so accustomed to, skipping and, playing through my streaming apps with all the controls on my fingertips, sitting down and actually listening to this turntable from beginning to end was almost like a concert kind of experience. When you go to a concert, you don't just leave. You stay from the very beginning to the end. Whether, you like 2 tracks out of that album or 1, you stay and you listen to the entire thing. And it's hard to explain, but there's a bit of a tranquility in that experience. To me, I found that it was more therapeutic. It allowed me to connect to music in a more emotional way and actually learn about some of the pieces that I skipped before on my streaming apps. And maybe I'm going just crazy, but listening to the turntable setup here, I found that I felt less stressed, more relaxed while listening to music, which allowed me to connect to the music more in a more meaningful and engaging emotional way. Not to mention that playing the same tracks I played over and over again, probably thousands of times on my streaming setup, playing the same tracks on this turntable, I found that I heard details that I really didn't hear before, even on my ultra expensive high-end streaming setup, which was a shocker. However, talking about detail, this is not a hyper detailed turntable. One of the biggest and most important criteria for me when I was looking for my turntable was that it was able to play poor recordings that I had, because again, majority of my collection was passed down from my grandfather and my mother. A lot of the recording is poorly recorded. And from my experience with the high-end turntables that cost an arm and a leg and a kidney in my case, that I used to play around with at the high-end retail store I used to work at, those turntables would dissect and be analytical to a point where when I put on my poor recordings, I would get this thin and lifeless sound. To me, it sounded unnatural and even worse than streaming in those cases, because it was like adding sharpness to a film photo. Just like how we have digital cameras that has sharpness out the wazoo these days, we have streaming for that. A turntable should have its own beauty as it does with film photos. When I put on poor recordings onto this turntable, not only do I get more detail, but the body and the warmth that turntables are known for. The musicality is next to none, and while really good recordings may sound better on those higher end turntables in the past that I've experienced, definitely the poor recordings I've had, I really haven't heard better on a different turntable, vintage or modern. And you can imagine how much that makes me appreciate this turntable even more. So like I mentioned, this turntable is not for everyone. It's not for people that's just getting into the turntable hobby. It's not for people that is looking for, a budget turntable that is a good bang for the buck. There are turntables out there that is meant for that, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, this turntable is for someone, again, because of the price point as well, But just the engineering and the time and effort that goes into a turntable like this is really designed for someone with a large collection that wants to hear the best out of their both poor and really good recorded music. So is turntable indefinitely better than streaming? No, I don't think so. Streaming, like I said, with digital cameras, brings sharpness and lower distortion, better specs than a turntable ever will. But there's a certain beauty to a turntable, just like how there's a certain beauty to a film photo. And having played around with many DACs and streamer setups in the past, as you've seen on my channel, it's my personal current standing belief that it just cannot emulate the beauty of a turntable setup. So that's it from me. I hope this video was enjoyable, and if it was, please subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. And also make sure to click the like button, as it helps my channel out greatly and it doesn't cost you anything. And I'll see you guys on my next journey. Until next time.